she was like, I'm so busy too, but I just feel bad.
Right. And sometimes like you really just need that time. I mean, I feel like you're so good at that though, making time for your friends and
I try, but it has been not as good lately because I am so busy now with work. Like
yeah.
when you do 9 to 5 and it only leaves nights and like every night of the week, my kids have things or my husband has things like, so
Yeah.
it narrows down when you can say yes. And so I think people are used to me saying yes a lot more, but I'm trying to be really intentional about the business too. So it's like I can't say yes all day, every day. Like,
I
so I
know.
have to be very
It's like not
mindful,
possible. Yeah.
right? Right. I'm
Yeah.
sure you have that too, right?
Yeah, I know. I thought like at this age with Gray, like I would slow down a little bit, but now it's like busier because of the activities after school and like in the evenings. So yeah, it's much harder to, you just have to organize it differently. Like whether you're going to a networking event or like when we go meet at our Bible study, it's like with your partner, you really have to like trade off and just be like, all right, can you do pickup tonight or, carpool with a friend? Yeah, it forces me to ask for help a lot more and try to organize. But you do still have to say no. It's like, I was actually just thinking this last night. I'm like, what can I do that won't affect my mental health, and like, but still be good for myself and my business? Because it really has to like benefit your energy, right? Whether it's going to benefit my business or not. Like, if it's not going to help me energy wise right now where I am, then I am like, all right, I got to say no for right now because it's just not worth it if it's gonna like mess with my family and like how I feel in my
Yeah.
daily life. Yeah.
You know what I think has helped is finding friends who also understand business. That's
Mm-hmm.
been kind of a game changer for me because you almost feel both at once. So
Mm-hmm.
dual purpose for meeting because like I met with one guy from my I joined EO. I don't know if I told you about that.
No.
Uh, but it's basically how to get your business from, and I know this isn't why we're here. I don't want to take all your time. Basically how to get your business from gross revenues of like 250 to a million within 3 years.
Yeah.
So they're most of the people in it are millionaire. Like they make a gross million in sales or whatever. So it's been really refreshing because it's not networking. It's not like to
Mm.
get businesses. They just talk to you about how you can restructure things, how you can do things differently to get to your goal, right?
Yeah.
And it's different being around people like that because like one guy, we had just a Zoom call yesterday and before we left, we didn't even talk about work, which I thought it was going to be all about work. And before we left, he's like, so what can I keep you accountable for? Like personally, business wise, and
Mm.
what can I have you keep me accountable for? And I'm like, I'm not used to people who ask those questions, but that's a game changing question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Well, and I think they're all related too, right? Like personally and professionally, how your personal life is really going to affect how your professional life is and vice versa. And, how you take care of yourself and all that stuff is so related. And I think when you're scaling your business, you always think you have to work harder, but that's not necessarily the case. You can work more smartly, and that's when those professionals, those coaches and stuff come in handy because you're like, it's doable, but like you almost think it's not doable because you already have your plate so full. But I think it's saying no, like you said, to some things and maybe saying yes to something you might be a little scared of too.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely it. I did training 2 days last week in person with Jack Daly, and he's
Mm.
like sales and personal life guru. Like he takes things to levels I don't know that I
Wow.
do. Like every single minute of every day he analyzes, and so he knows how long he sleeps, and he could tell us,
Yeah.
and he writes it down. He doesn't even have a computer. It's all in his
Wow.
little book. 25. He's like,
I love that.
my average sleep last month was sleeping hours last month was this. My average walk, run,
Yeah.
he's trans, whatever. But yeah, he was very challenging in that way. And one of the things that he kind of opened my eyes to in the workshop, well, on the sales night actually, was that a CEO of a company, of a successful company, can't also be the sales manager.
Mm.
And I've literally never thought of hiring a salesperson,
Yep.
but I left going, I absolutely have to make that next step because
Yeah.
I have ideas of revenue generating things that I think could very easily happen, but
Yeah.
I cannot implement them and I can't be the visionary
Yeah.
and those other things. And
Yeah.
so it's scary, but I feel like it's absolutely necessary to get to a next step.
Yeah. Well, and I think like we all have gifts, right? And like sometimes you're better at one thing and not as great at the other things. So like maybe sales isn't your number one thing, you know, and that's why you would bring that person on. I mean, it's almost like, what was Apple, right? Like Steve Jobs, he was like the visionary, and then he had someone that like ran the business aspect of it because he wasn't good at that part. And it's like, obviously it blew up. And I think it's okay if you're not good at something to step back and ask for someone to come in and, you know, take that over for you. And it also opens up other doors for you to do something else within the business that you really love and enjoy.
And that's what he's like, you'll have the home life balance you want if the right people are doing the right jobs. If it can't sustain itself, like if you hire all these people and it can't sustain itself in a year, then it's not a viable company. And off it goes, and get a 9 to 5 job and enjoy your family, because he was big on family is priority. Like,
I love that. And I mean, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today somewhat. I mean, we jumped right in. I didn't even introduce you. So everyone out there listening, we have Sarah Trop here, and she is just incredible. But Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about you before we jump back into work-life balance?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Megan. I'm a huge fan, as you know. And so even just getting asked really was such an honor to be on here with you. I have owned Fun Cycle for 12 years. I started when my kids were just little tiny toddlers, and I started Fun Cycle to upcycle and recycle furniture, just furniture. That was my lane, because I love to paint and my husband loved to build furniture. So it was a good kind of mix of both, right? So I would work when the kids were sleeping at their nap times, and from usually 8 till midnight on the weeknights. And so from there, we were delivering furniture. I distinctly remember carrying like a huge hutch up 3 flights of outdoor stairs in Saratoga in a freezing rainstorm, thinking, what am I doing? And so I started hiring people to start doing some of the work with me. John joined me, my husband. And then as I was doing deliveries, people would say, can you decorate this space for me? Could you do this? You know, and so I went into kitchen cabinet painting and interior design. So it was a gradual walk into all of those things, but I've been doing all 3 for about 7 years now. So
wow.
It's fun.
And it's a family business, right? Your husband works alongside you, and I'm sure your kids. Yeah.
They're on payroll. They all have jobs.
Oh, really? The kids are on payroll?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
But yeah, Josh does deliveries and carries all the heavy things with my husband, John. And then Harvey does a lot of my photography, edits of those, and then some design jobs. Usually I bring her in when it's like a kid's room or something. I think maybe I'm a little too old to be making a recommendation here.
I doubt it. I mean, I feel like you have such a good eye, but it's nice to have like a different point of view too from a younger child. Yeah. How old are your kids?
So Harmony just turned 15 and Josh is 16.
Okay.
So back to back.
So they've been with you the whole way pretty much with this business. So, I mean, we were just talking about, like, if anybody just joined in and missed our first conversation where I didn't even introduce you, we've been talking about scaling your business, but also, like, being able to find that balance within, you know, working and being home. So how has this been, Sarah, like, along the way? You're building this business, you know, what was it like, you know, trying to find that balance? Is there such a thing?
Well, it's funny. When they were littler, I think in every season of parenting, you tend to think you're in the hardest season of parenting, right? So when they were like, it's impossible, I get no sleep, blah, blah. But looking back, I would say toddlers was probably the easiest because they napped at a certain time. They went to bed at a certain time with no fussing. And so I could have those, you know, blocked time frames where I could be really intense with work. And then as their school time was easy to do that. After school, you know, was not too bad because they didn't have a lot of homework. I think now I'm getting actually into the harder season where text midday with emotional things like, Mom, I'm so-and-so made fun of me, or this happened. I'm in the bathroom and I'm stressed and help me, you know, so it'll be breaking the cycle of work all during the day. And then at night, teens are very needy. So like they want a professional Uber driver. So I feel like right now, and maybe it's just because I'm in it, it feels like the busiest season. But I know we're 2 and 3 years away from they're in college. So it's par for the course, I think, a little bit.
Right. Now, did you decide that you want to scale your business even bigger because you're going into that season? Or what is it like, you know, raising teenagers where you do know that they're going to be probably out of the house within, you know, 5 years?
Yeah. So a little bit of that is true that I'm scaling slightly because I know 2 to 3 years I'll have a lot more time and I want to set it up where it can scale even more. Part of it is one of my goals is to get a TV show, and I really am trying to go towards that.
Yeah.
And I know that even I was a little nervous about doing that when they were younger because I didn't know how that would affect their high school years, where now, even if we were to get a contract, started recording next year, it wouldn't air till they were out of high school. So
Right.
I feel like timing is good if God opens the door for that. I don't know, you know, that I'll get it. I'm pushing now because I feel like it would be a healthier situation for them, probably.
Yeah. That's so great. So you're saying it seems busier now. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you came up against, while building this business and having children?
Yeah, so I would say one of the family dynamics that was the most challenging was working with my spouse, because we're in it all day, every day, and typically you marry your opposite, right? Most people themselves. And so it took the first 4 years was distinctly the hardest with John and I, learning how to work together. Now it's a much smoother process work-wise, now that we're together quite a few years. From a kid's perspective, I want to have this quick answer to say, if you do this and this and this, it makes it easy. But two layers of advice. And one I would say is you're going to have slow seasons and you're going to have hard, busy seasons. And I was just doing our year and life goals with our kids over the weekend, this past weekend, where we fill out based on every category, where we are 1 to 10 and where do we want to be 1 to 10. And one of the things that we talked about in business, I said, what is our family? How do we view business? And we kind of all agreed. They said, yeah, we play hard, we work hard so we can play hard. So they know that there's seasons where we're going to do some long days. We're going to work all weekend long because there's an event or whatever. But when we are done with that and we're together, I try to be really intentional not to let work flood into those times. Every once in a while, obviously it has to happen, but typically I try not to have those two bleed into each other that often. And at first I wasn't good at that.
Yeah.
Like it would patience, because I'd be like, oh, this person's not paying, or I don't know if I got this job. What if they, and then over the years I've kind of gone, it's furniture, it's painting things. There's no one's going to die if something's not painted.
It is hard. I think that's one of the hardest things, to be intentionally present, to shut that business part off and just be in that room with your kids. I definitely struggle with that. I'm a hairstylist, so I talk to women every single day. And I think that's one of the hardest things that I come across. And like I hear other moms talk about is like, dads can go from their job and come and be completely present with that kid. But moms have all of this stuff going on in their head, whether it is about work or like the dishes, the laundry that hasn't been folded for 2 days, or, whatever's going on. So that is definitely hard. What have you come up with any strategies? Like you said, you've been practicing, right, year after year. What have you found that works the best?
Well, I try to be not involved in as little as I possibly can in the household. So I couldn't do this at first, right? But the more you get in business, or if you're in a profession where you make good money, I always say, if you can give some of those things up to somebody else so you have the time to be intentional, it's helpful. Like I have a cleaner for my house, and a lot of people would say, well, that's extravagant. And I say, well, that's 2 hours or 4 hours or 7 if it's a deep clean I'm spending with my kids. So it's how you, right? For me, I'd rather do what I'm really good at for a couple hours to pay someone else to do what they're really good at for a couple hours. And as long as the time matches up. So like, I know it's all very logical in my brain, it might not make sense to everyone, but I just kind of look at the dollar value and say, if I'm X amount per hour, why wouldn't I be hiring somebody else to do? You can save more money if you don't do that. But to me, having the most money isn't the most important thing in my life. Having the quality of life with my kids. So if I can have somebody clean, or if I can pay someone to mow, or, like nothing, we actually pay them to do some of that. I mean, they have chores that aren't paid, but extra things where they want to make money. So that's a huge help, is to pull off that. And then getting my mindset out of what stereotypical families look like. This was a big struggle. I grew up in a Christian home. We are a Christian home. My dad was a pastor. So it was very much like the guy made money. He came home. and go to unplug. And the mom did everything else, except for the house. But even the house stuff, my dad is not handy at all. So my mom did almost everything,
Okay.
And so when I got married, I kind of thought that that's how it should be in my family. Like, I just have to do everything, cook the meals. And we love to have people over. We were hosting a party. I was out, or I was cooking, which if you know me, I don't cook.
Okay.
I'm not good at it at all. I was cooking, and my husband John was out talking to people, which is how it would have been in my home growing up.
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly that day, everyone left, and I said to John, never again. This is not what we are made to be. Like, but my stereotypical thought of what marriage looks like is, and it's not at all healthy for us. He has a culinary degree. He loves to cook, and he hates talking to people. I love to talk to people.
You guys really are total opposites.
Yeah. I love to host, and I do not enjoy cooking. It's just not my passion. Oh, and he's like, why are we doing it this way? And it's like, because that's what every family does. And he goes, not anymore. I don't care if we're different than every one of our friends. I'm the cook now. You're the people person now. Yeah. Let's have a good. And it was such a game changer in our relationship. So I don't cook at night. Yeah. So people, how do you have time? Well, John has a culinary degree.
Yeah.
He and I both work full time. So his thing is he cooks. So I try to really stay in my lane as much as possible, because I think as moms, we tend to go in everybody's lane. Mm-hmm. We can't just let go. So for instance, this is going to sound terrible, but my husband wanted chickens. And I said, if you want chickens, cool, but I have to care less if they die. Like, I can't look at their food. I can't give them water. I can't care, because if I start to care, I'm the one feeding them every time.
Yeah.
So I really have to be hands off, and they've lived and they're thriving, and he takes good care of them. But I just really do have to stay completely out of that situation, which takes a level of not being a controlling person, which instinctively most women we want to control and make sure.
Like type A. I am totally type A. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that is like really, really good advice. And, that whole thing of just asking for help or hiring someone where you can, or delegating tasks, or even just like, I mean, in my household too, growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom and she did all the household stuff, but like, it's not the same now where we do work, whether it's part-time or full-time. You still have to figure out what tasks should be yours and what can you ask for help for. And I always thought, well, my husband doesn't want to do that. And until I couldn't handle it anymore, and I was so burned out, and I'm like, I really need some help with this. And he's like, oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Like, I'll take that on. And like, it's like, what? Yeah. I think sometimes we just have it so stuck in our head that, we have to do these things, when you really just need to communicate with your partner and kind of figure out what works best for you guys. And it sounds like you guys did that with the cooking. I still cook, but I mean, it's like, there are nights that he will cook because I'm not here or I'm working late or something. And, you have to let it go. Like you said, it's like, it doesn't matter. And like, if something gets burned, or maybe you shrink something in the laundry because they took that over, like, who cares, right? I mean, it's really not the end of the world. It's more important that they're actually like listening to what you're saying, that you need some support. Yes. So you don't get to that like burned out, mother type that we see so often here in our country. So I love that.
And I think that principle can even bleed into children, because for instance, my kids have specific chores that are just their chores every day. And because they don't like the questioning of, oh, I wonder, should I do it? Should I not do it? And just even this morning, for example, my 16-year-old said, I said, you didn't do your chores yesterday, so you need to hustle and do it this morning before you leave for school. And he's like, well, I had a busy day. And I was like, I get that. We all have had busy days though. And I've done your chores 3 times this week. So my busy is not less important than your busy. Like, we both just have to hustle a little harder on the busier days. Yeah. And I think that's a good lesson to learn. Like, we're all going to have busy moments. He's sitting down watching shows and relaxing all night, so if that, he's got to do his part. So explain to them, even when they don't want to hear it, because they're teens, it's important.
Well, I mean, I think that's important at any age, right? Because like, kids don't understand time. At least my daughter doesn't. She's like, well, I didn't have time. I'm like, well, no, you chose to do other things versus like what you were supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like, giving them some responsibility, like Gray is very, very responsible. And, I work one day past her time that she gets off the bus, and, my husband's here with her, but he's working. And yesterday she went and emptied the dishwasher for me, and without being asked. And I came home later and I was like, oh, who did this? Did you do this to my husband? He's like, no, Gray did it. I'm like, so, I think they figured it out. Like, okay, mom's having a really busy day. Where can I help? Or like, how can I do, a little bit more and help out? Because her time is really packed. Or like if Josh is packed this time, you helped him out, right? So hopefully he'll return that favor, or whether it happens now or years from now where he learned and you kept seeing that over and over again, it does come back and help you, I feel like, when you do give them that responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And I watch sometimes when you see them at home versus other social settings, I watch my kids in social settings and they will be the ones who see a need and do it. And I'm like, there we go. That's what I want more than anything.
Yeah.
Not need to be told like little robots what to do, but who can think outside of the box.
Because they see it over and over again. I mean, I've definitely seen that now. I feel like it does take time though, because like you're like, I'm just repeating myself over and over again and nothing's happening, but it does. I mean, they definitely hear you, and I feel like it does come back. It can just take like years.
Yes.
To see it. So and I saw what were you gonna say?
Those younger toddler years, I remember going, they're just so naughty. Like I say the same thing every day, all day, and they just don't listen. And I went to a mom's group, which when you have toddlers, I think that's just a lifeblood, is someone else watch your kids for a couple hours and talk to other humans without a kid.
Totally.
I think that if you don't have one, you should find one.
Yes.
Starpoint just started one, but the one I was in one, they had a doctor speaking, and she spoke about toddlers, and she said, it is not personal when a toddler does not listen to you. All they care about are the things you said yesterday going to be true today? Like they're all about boundaries. That's all they want to know. Is there a consistency? And I went, oh, wow, it's actually not a personal attack. Like it was such a shift in my mindset of going, this is just my job, is to say, yep, no, we're not going to touch that hot thing. Nope, you can't walk off the balcony. Before that, it did feel like a personal attack.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, because I saw that in your questionnaire and I was like, all right, what is the secret to not take anything personally? Because I feel like that is such a game changer, because, when they don't eat their broccoli or when they're really mean to you, it really isn't personal. It's like they trust us with everything. And I feel like we're the ones that get the brunt of like their crankiness and their grumpiness and their naughtiness or whatever. Like right now, it's like Gray is just sass, just like, duh, all that stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it's so rude, but she's not trying to be rude to me. It's just the way the kids talk. And like, no matter how many times I correct her, I can't take it personally, because I'll be crying like all the time, probably, if I take it personally. And it isn't. Even when I get an attitude, like 10 minutes later, she's back to being my daughter and not that horrible, little human. And, so it's like, if I took that personally, I'm wasting so much energy on that when it's really not trying to like hurt me,
Yeah. I mean, what I try to think through, and again, not perfect at it, but I really don't, I try not to take things too personally. I do think disrespect is unacceptable. Like there's been times 100%. Where one of my kids, let me at them, the mouth. And I'll be like, those or you're losing X, Y, or Z. Like you are not going to, because our home, what I've said from day one with them, our home is not going to be a place that has that. It'll be a place of peace and respect. Like, have to love what I told you, but you're not going to talk to me like that. So does it still happen? Absolutely. Do I have to correct it on a basis?
Yeah.
100%. But then there's also really big moments. And I think as you step into teen years, I mean, you'll get moments where you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
In a setting where where they've had to say, but I don't want you to respond. Just listen why. And not being able to defend why the reasoning was ridiculous in my opinion.
Right.
And in therapy, they were basically like, this is actually, you should be grateful because they usually, people who are emotionally struggling will attack typically the person that they're most comfortable and loved by.
Yep.
And so I have to depersonalize it all the time and just go, I should be glad I feel.
Yeah.
And but it is hard
It's
work.
so hard. Yeah. I mean, Gray is in this phase where she's like, oh, I hate my life. Like that to me. And I'm like, oh my God, you literally have everything. That's what I want to say. And I'm just like, all right, I'll listen. And like, I mean, same thing. Like, you can't talk to me like that. So, you're going to have to either go to your room and, take a couple minutes and then come back and talk to me. But you can't talk to me in that tone. That I feel like that is constant. And I does that get better? I mean, tell me.
I have found it has gotten worse, but
oh my God.
I think the teen years are just tricky. I think actually Pastor said on Sunday, right? It was, or 2 Sundays ago, that teens are dealing with more like emotional anxiety and problems than people in psych wards in the 70s. Like they have so much, and a lot of that has to do with social media, which my kids don't have, and they still don't like me for. But it's one of those things that I'm just like, I refuse to add to this anxiety that you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to someone the other day and she's like, I'm going to be that bad mom that is that mean mom. And like, no, you cannot have this phone or this social media. And I mean, that sucks. And I know I'm going to be that person too, but we're the only ones, like you said, they love us the most and they trust us the most. They have to understand maybe when they're in their 20s why we did that for them. But you might still have to be that bad mom.
One thing, I was talking to a friend over the weekend, and I get this heart, right? They consistently say like, well, we want our tween or teen to be able to make these crucial decisions for themselves. So we feel like we're handing them social media and all these things are actually good for them because it's helped stepping them into adulthood, which I understand. Like every family has to do it what they feel is right for them. But one of the things I said to them is I often feel like social media, or just not even social media, but unmonitored internet, anything, it's giving them opportunity to be exposed to things that their brains aren't ready for. And it don't want them to have connection. But even in that, I said, do you mind if I show you her phone and why I would be concerned if I would be concerned? And I could show her multiple things that like, here's something that she's probably seeing that I would say might be problematic. And she was like, wow, I have to lock this stuff down, but we naturally want to trust our kids, which is beautiful, right? Like we want them to grow. Yeah. But I think we almost overexpose, and then so many things come from it. I mean, we've had our daughter almost be trafficked. We've had lots of major issues, like
it's scary.
I mean, they don't even have social media.
Yeah. That's so scary. I mean, I get where your friend is coming from for sure. Because I mean, this is our world, right? And the technology is just going to get even crazier with all this AI and all this stuff. But at the same time, it's like they're kids, and like you said, they're not developmentally ready to handle some of this stuff. So you have to set up those boundaries for them to keep them safe because they can't make the right decisions in some areas. So maybe giving them some big responsibilities in other ways that aren't like social media or that could be dangerous, like trafficking and, even like being open to more like bullying and being exposed to way more things, in YouTube and, and on social media and TikTok and all these places where sometimes you can't control what you see. If you're just scrolling, you get exposed to way more than you would if you weren't on that.
Right. And maybe because I've seen so many situations that I just feel like if you knew the exposure that could happen, it's going to happen probably anyway, even with your lockdowns, but you're lowering that accessibility. I mean, one really good friend of mine, her son was exposed to like basically how to kill human bodies and dispose of them, and ended up in a psych ward watching them nonstop because he was watching them nonstop. Yeah. I mean, and you would have no idea. And he enjoyed. Yeah. So, and this is all some friends at school showed him, and he became obsessed with it. Like that's all he could watch. And she didn't know she had everything locked down, and he was circumventing it. So it's just, there's so many, I could tell you example after example where it's just, we have to be vigilant.
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes down to too, like we are what we surround ourselves with, right? So if you're constantly on a video game that's shooting people or, all this stuff, if your mind is constantly absorbing that, it's like, that's ultimately like what you're going to think about. Yeah. And I think that's the same with, YouTube and social media. It's like whatever you're watching on there, you're going to get sucked into. And, it is addicting. And I think that's the thing that kids don't get either. Like, even as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, I've been on this for that long. Like, what in the world? Because it really is just it's so addicting.
Well, that's one thing that's funny to me about technology versus anything else. If it was anything else that was addictive, we would definitely be putting our foot down and saying, our kids can't be smoking cigarettes. They can't be drinking. They can't, they can't be looking at pornography. But if it's technology that has a negative impact on their mind, their health, and it's even more addicting than a lot of those other things, there's no mitigation. Like, there's nothing saying this is okay or not. Not saying we need the law to do that, but it's something I think parents need to take a pause and consider for sure.
Well, I think because it's like the norm, right? It's like when it's normal, it's like you don't want to be that person that's saying no and, being that family that like doesn't have a cell phone until you're 18 years old. And like, doesn't mean they're never going to see it, because, right, they'll go to a friend's house and that friend will have a phone and they'll go on YouTube or whatever, right? But it's like, this is your family, right? And what are your values and what are your boundaries? And you really need to set it up there, because I mean, I'm hoping and praying that, even like if Gray does go to her friend's house and goes on her iPad or whatever, like when she's older, she's going to remember, or when she comes to a point where she's like, wow, this isn't really great for my mind, I'm not feeling right, that she'll remember that, like, oh, this is why mom and dad didn't want me to be on this, because I actually can't handle this and maybe I should get off. Setting that foundation where what is right for your family and really sticking to it and not caring what people think either. I mean, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, it's so true. And actually, even with our pastor preaching on all the social media things, my kids were actually in one of the services and we left, and Harmony, my daughter, said, Mom, I'm just so glad you don't let us have social media now that I hear how much anxiety it gives people.
Yeah.
Like, I've been saying I want it, but now I don't even want it.
Yeah.
And that was so good to hear. And a lot of the times when they'd ask me for social media, one of the things I found helpful with teens especially is I don't even say, well, that's just our rule. I say, what does your doctor say at the doctor's appointment? Did they ask you if you had social media? And they'd say, yeah. And I'm like, did they say it wasn't good for your brain? And they said, yeah. I said, okay, so a medical doctor saying it's not good for your brain. Let me show you some articles that this, because I think, especially in the Christian world, a lot of kids just think I can't do it because my parents are strict and they don't want me to be exposed to bad things, right? And to me, I'm like, it's not just that. Yes, I want your heart to be pure. I don't want you to set something wicked before your eyes, right? Like, that's biblical, but it goes even so many more layers deep. And when they understood this isn't necessarily a religious reason only, right? This is a medical reason. This is a psychology reason. They kind of, it depersonalized it a little bit for them. And then they stopped acting like I was an idiot and trying to be too controlling of their space. Oh, yeah. Even the doctor says I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And they really stopped asking me after that.
Yeah. And even Pastor Rusko saying it too. Like, Gray heard something my husband and I were talking about, and she kind of rolled her eyes at me, and I'm like, but it kind of just proved, what we've been saying, that kids don't necessarily need a cell phone. She'll be like, well, Mom, what if I need to call you, at soccer practice? I'm like, honey, I didn't have a cell phone until I was 18 and I survived. I had nothing. Like, I mean, this was the 90s, I didn't have a cell phone until I was like a senior in high school. And I'm not saying she won't have a phone, but it won't have the internet on it or, social media, that type of stuff.
And the other thing I think that's important to teach our kids, which I wish I had been taught, is that, and my parents are great. They taught me so many wonderful things, but that it's okay to not be liked, right? Like, if somebody doesn't like you or doesn't think you're cool because you don't have a cell phone, they're not your people. Like, that's just, they're not your people.
Yeah.
I literally screenshotted this morning to text them. You absolutely have to become okay with not being liked. No matter how loving or kind you are, you will never people please your way into collective acceptance. You could be a whole ray of sunshine and people will hate you because they are used to the rain. Be okay with shining regardless. So it's kind of like we're called the light. You're shining in a different way.
Yeah.
It sucks because you want to feel like you fit in. But if you can master the idea, there's two things I say to them a lot. If you can be okay with not being liked, and if you can be okay, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, you'll be wildly successful, right? Because most people stay in their comfort, and that doesn't allow for growth, and it doesn't allow for
Exactly.
risk. And
Yeah.
everything in my life that has been successful was uncomfortable.
Totally.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like, I love that because I mean, well, and I think it's so important to know that not everyone is going to like you too, right? Like, it's like,
To think everyone would like me. I really did. Genuinely believed.
or like that people pleasing spirit to just like try to help and make people like you. And it's like, no, like God created me for a reason for who I am. And, you know, that's good enough. You know, he loves me for who I am. And yeah. I try to
It's the
remind
people.
myself of that daily, especially in business world and personally, right? Because it's like not everyone is going to love how I do hair, and that's okay. You know, I don't like everybody, right? Like, I mean, do you? It's like, no.
I love everyone. Don't forget.
You do love a lot of people. I will say that.
I had someone say the other day, how do you have so many different personality friends? You must not be a genuine person, or someone wouldn't like you. I'm like, I'm sure there's lots of people who don't like me. I just like a lot of different people with different backgrounds.
Well, you're just totally extroverted too. I have my best friend is like you. She has so many different groups of friends and it works for her. For me, it doesn't. I'm, you know, a little mix of introversion and extroversion. So I don't know. And I think I kind of had to come to that realization too. Like, of course, not everyone's going to like me, but I don't have to like everybody and make them my friend. You know, I think like cutting that down and really just like focusing on those friends that really lift me up was a big game changer for me. And I definitely want to pass that on to my daughter too, because like that can be exhausting, you know, trying to make everyone your friend where maybe you don't vibe or maybe you're not, you know, on the same level and have the same priorities. And that's okay too.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with that more. Although I agree with it. Work in progress.
All right, Sarah. So let's wrap it up. What is one thing you can say or like the best advice you can give to women out there that have teenagers? You know, what would you say is the thing that you focus on most with your kids?
Yeah, I would say teaching the value of quality time is really important. And by that, I mean, what is that actually? You know, like conversation and not being distracted by their phones and creating a good balance. I like to say this a lot too, of being interesting and interested. So like have enough of your own self that you're interesting to share what book you're reading or what value or what trip you want to go on next. But then don't just talk about yourself. Be interested in other people to ask the right questions. I think that has helped them in relationships as teens because so many teens don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
cool. I like that. Yeah.
And then what else would I say? I think a lot of teen moms need to hear that they need to trust their gut. There's so many times where my friends have been like, well, they wouldn't, like, because they said they didn't. And I'm like, if you feel like something's off, you pursue that until you figure it out for sure. Don't trust their words. Look for what's actually happening. And that is where God gives you that instinct. I really believe that. Like sometimes I think we almost question that because we want to trust that everything's good and everything's fine. But go with your gut and pursue that. And also, I know I'm going into a lot of things.
No, it's okay. Keep going. I love it.
I think women they're the mood setters of the space of their home, right? So if you're not in a place where you have peace, joy, or love, which we know comes from Christ, right? And hard work at intentionally growing in him, not just saying Jesus and that's it, you know? You can't expect that your house will exude that as well. And there's going to be days that you fight like you've never fought in the teenage years and you cry like you've never cried.
No, I think you're so right. And it really, we are the leaders of the home. And I really do think, you know, I mean, our moods and just our being, like finding our purpose, you know, within motherhood and outside of motherhood and with Jesus and, you know, all those things, I feel like it all has to kind of meet, and it's not ever going to be perfect, but finding that balance of those things. Cause I mean, I have definitely gone through seasons recently where, you know, it was not meeting anywhere. And thank God I did have Jesus in those moments because, you know, it affects your whole entire family. And so you really do have to fight so hard and maybe do things that Like I had to let go of things that I didn't think I should have to let go of. And, but it really did make a big difference. And you really can't be ashamed of these failures and mistakes. You really have to just push through them and get past them because there is another side. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I see so many moms like, and I put it on myself too, so much pressure to like be everything for their teens, be everything for their family. And the other day I said to one friend, I was like, I just had to take a nap. Like I was so, I feel like I should have been with the kids, helping them with blah, blah. And she goes, you overestimate how much you're needed.
Yeah.
What you need is to be rested and happy. And that's more important than being in their presence every minute that they are free.
Yeah.
Like sometimes the self-care is way more important because you show up in a different way. Right. So
absolutely.
Many moms that I know of teens, there is no self-care at all. Like we're just in a season where it's like we're working and then we're running kids everywhere all night and we don't get to read, work out. And that's something I've been really convicted about myself, is like making time to make my health a priority. Like it's good for that, you know? Yeah.
I mean, you really do have to make a conscious effort to take care of yourself because you just get sucked into that tornado of burnout, and that's a constant evolution, I feel like. But it really does make such a difference, because if I'm tired, you know, I am not a good parent. I'm just not. Like, I'm not a good human being, basically. So I need my sleep, and I show up so much better. So yeah, those people out there sacrificing sleep, or even just like your meals, like sacrificing, like you need to eat too. You need to make that time for yourself, whether it's like 5 minutes of quiet time. It really does make such a difference. And that time with God too, you know, being able to have, and that could be 5 minutes too, whether you're reading your Bible or journaling or whatever. But it really will make such a difference in your day. And I think you're right. There's so many women. I'm actually speaking at Mastering Motherhood in a couple weeks, and you know, I'm going to talk about my story of how I kind of pulled myself out of some of that burnout cycle, which again, it's like, it's not perfect, right? It's like a constant thing where I have to be aware of. But I'm going to share, you know, kind of my strategies around that, and just like how taking care of yourself really can change you as a parent, and make you a better parent and business owner and all of the things, really. And to give yourself permission to actually like rest and like take a nap or sit down, because, you know, our kids they're going to be okay. You know, you really do just have to show up for yourself to be able to show up for them.
Absolutely. And when you're raising someone that's an opposite of you, like realizing my level of what I like to do is very different from my kids, right? For instance, like Monday, I just stay home and worked, and I thought, oh, this is a bad mom moment. We were gone all weekend in Boston. We were busy, but now I'm not doing anything and they're off from school. Why am I not? And we got halfway through the day. I'm like, how are you guys doing? And they're like, oh, it's the best day. We just rested. And I thought, oh, well, aren't we different? Like I thought I was failing, and they're like, the best day of our lives. We just got to rest, you know?
That's amazing. I wish I had done that, because then I made other plans and I was so tired because we were away over the weekend too. But I think you do have to kind of just learn from those things. Like next time I'm like, all right, nope, I'm not making plans. We're just going to stay home and rest and recuperate, because it is so important. Yeah.
It is definitely. Well, thanks so much for asking me to come on.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You too.
I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I feel like you need to come back on and do another episode already, because I feel like we have much more to talk about.
I know. I feel like, oh, what about this? Don't forget this.
We'll plan another time to come back on for sure. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, and you have a great day. I hope everything gets better too with your friends.
Thank you.